As it continued to descend, gas and dust began to extend towards Earth. Lateral displacements of both Venus and Mars occurred. Gas, ice, and debris spiraled between the two planets. Eventually, the spiraling material gathered into a band encircling Venus. As the planetary system moved through space, the appearance of the band changed dramatically. The vertical movements of Mars continued. Atmosphere and other material stretching toward the Earth with each descent. Eventually, this material reached the Earth with disastrous effects. When the skies cleared, Mars was seen moving away, a stream of gas and dust stretching upward, with Mars appearing as the apex of the illuminated column. The band encircling Venus gradually opened. The four streams of comet-like material radiated once more from Venus. And material stretching from Mars to Earth retreated up the polar axis. The stable period of Saturn's domination ended with the collapse of the planetary configuration. Jupiter appeared for the first time as Saturn tumbled from its stationary position. These events were followed by a period of great confusion and upheaval. With the displacement of Venus, the band and radiating material collapsed, spiraling between Venus and Mars, then scattering into whirl-like patterns. There was a temporary renewal of the configuration, now visually dominated by Jupiter. And only later did the configuration fall apart, the planets moving into a new, more remote equilibrium.
Though nothing could now shake my conviction in the historical argument, I could not defend it in terms acceptable to science. This was a problem I was unable to solve for 20 years. Eventually, I despaired of ever finding a solution. So in 1991, I quit. I sold my entire library, abdicating my life's work. For a year and a half, I never opened a book or once put pen to paper on the subject of myth. Then one day I received a phone call from a stranger. "Mr. Talbot," he said, "I think I have an answer to your dilemma."
How are you, sir?
Good seeing you again.
You bet.
Bob Grubaugh, a specialist in orbital mechanics, had developed a physical model supporting the thesis. It wasn't a complete answer, but it gave me confidence that the dynamical issues could be resolved. A few months later, I was back at work.
From outer space and approach the Earth. And then this is the segment where we come down on these pyramids. Yes, we've got.
The present arrangement of the solar system from the Sun outward includes 9 planets. First Mercury, then Venus, Earth, and Mars, Jupiter, then Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and finally distant Pluto. In the ancient planetary system, 5 planets must be reckoned with. Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, Earth. This planetary configuration circled around its own center of gravity as it simultaneously revolved around the Sun. The planets were extremely close together, interacting with each other gravitationally. In this collinear system, the planets stayed in line. But the small planet Mars was moved by resonance into an increasingly elliptical orbit. It began to oscillate between the 2 larger planets, Venus and Earth. As Mars approached the larger bodies, atmosphere and oceans were pulled from its surface. Clouds of water, gas, and dust scattered into the surrounding space, then were pulled and stretched between the planets. The alignment grew progressively more unstable, leading to displacement of Venus, Mars, and presumably the Earth. Eventually, the result was a complete unraveling of the alignment, a dismemberment of the configuration.
And so what we can see with this is that the 2 definitely stay lined up. And it wanders a little bit because I'm unable to get the precision in this model that I have in my own. The precision of this model is only to 2 significant figures.
But even at just 2 significant figures, they do.
Even at 2 significant
hang in
figures,
there, so
they stay together. They don't fly apart. They don't draw together. I've been playing and manipulating with 6 significant figures to get the thing lined up in my model the way it's supposed to stay lined up. And it does. And it does very well. So they're really looking at it too.
And these are other variations on the
This
crescent.
is-
With
that
the
was
star.
technically
Is
giving
that
you-
the star and the crescent? Now that is a modern thing at the Masons, isn't it?
It's Islamic, actually.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is how can we account for the variations in the depictions then? And would it be easy to account for them if these things were actually handed down, these drawings? I mean, nobody was out there when the sky was being ripped apart and floods were devastating everything. Nobody was out there with their sketchbook, or taking notes, right? So they were looking at it.
This velocity component has a certain angle with the perpendicular to the radius. This will be the radius. And there's your
Okay.
velocity.
Right.
And this angle I call, in this particular model, I call it delta.
What determines that angle?
Well, what happens, what this is, you can determine where your line, where it reaches a point of symmetry. Oh, you ready to go?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, well, we're all
go.
set.
Yeah,
We're ready to
all set
roll.
here.
Shall we head on out?
One of the great intellectual surprises of this century will be the discovery that myth is our key to remembering. And if what we remember actually happened, then physics and astronomy are implicated, no matter how extraordinary, no matter how bizarre, no matter how implausible the events may seem. Since Bob Grubau's unexpected phone call, others have come forward. The professor of mathematics and astronomy, Robert Bass, has shown how tidal friction, though very small, adds a stabilizing influence to a collinear configuration. And the physicist Robert Driscoll has added the principle of electromagnetism to Grubau's model, bringing the planets closer together.
Is a comment that I got from Bob Driscoll, which says that when you have these planets lined up, circling the sun, there is no rotation of the line relative to inertial space.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very...
All right, the next speaker is David Talbot. To introduce him in short scope, he is the editor of a book called The Saturn Myth, which has provided an invaluable amount of data for almost everyone working in the field. He is also the founder of the journal Aeon and one of its major contributors, and he is one of the chief proponents of a
When ancient man looked out at the night sky, is this essentially what he saw? Is it possible that just a few thousand years ago, the sky was filled with forms that towered over ancient man?
The myths begin with the timeless epoch before the fall, before time-keeping references, before seasons, before the cycle of day and night.
It is the golden age, the age of the great planetary conjunction.